Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. My name is Zivile and I'm your host. And my guest today is almost impossible to introduce in one sentence. Rodrigo Sepulveda Schulz was born in Chile, grew up in Thailand, spent 36 years in Paris, and now calls Madrid home. And he just traveled the whole world. He's been a consultant, a founder, a venture capitalist who has seen 15,000 startups, a broadcaster with hundreds of episodes behind him. And today he's the CEO of a European AI company he believes is worth fighting for. He is also a serious wine scholar who once looked, in his own words, happier passing a wine exam than closing a multi-million-dollar deal. We get into all of it, the career, the wine, why he thinks Europe can't afford to be digitally colonized, and the one thing he loves more than tech or wine. And I think this 45 minutes are not enough to reveal the whole personality of Rodrigo, but it's a good start to get to know him better until we continue the different series. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's dive in. Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Rodrigo, welcome to Perception Paradox.
I'm so glad to be here.
Me too. It's been quite some time since the last time we caught up, so I always like to warm up.
Was breakfast in Lisbon.
In Lisbon, yes. Exactly.
Was Web Summit maybe a couple of years ago, was breakfast in the sun on the little square.
And it was just before you moved to Madrid. I think half a year later or 7 months later, you moved to Madrid, basically. And it was in Alfama. I remember it was Dear Breakfast Place. Here you go.
Dear Breakfast Place. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I moved to Madrid in July.
Lovely.
24. So it'll be a year and 51 weeks now.
And you moved from Paris, correct?
I was in Paris for many, many years. They summed up to 36 years.
My goodness. So how was it? How was the move? Like, it's kind of a big change in a way.
It's like moving your whole life.
Yeah.
I had been in the same apartment for 21 years. So I called a moving company. It took me 3.5 days to help the guys move the things out. I did not sort anything, and I brought a lot of stuff that I didn't need with me to Madrid, but my whole life is here now. Yes.
Did you declutter at least a bit, or you just, okay, let's pack it, let's move it, hi Madrid?
I packed everything and hi Madrid. Hello the sun, hello the blue sky.
I love it. Did you have any nostalgic moment to leave Paris and to leave the apartment where you've been for so many years?
I thought I did not, but then there was a cafe that just down the road or where I lived, where I used to go almost every day. I had a little touching moment there when I was like, shit, this is like the last time I'm sitting at this cafe. More than my house. Like the cafe, I had all my meetings, all my interviews, all my investments. I lived before my apartment for 21 years in another apartment just across that square for 8 years. So this was like 30 years of my life in that cafe. I had seen 4 owners, Yeah, so I was like leaving that cafe meant a bit more. Yeah.
That's heartbreaking. What can I say? For someone who spent the longest in one apartment, I think it was maybe 2.5 years for me. Besides growing up in one apartment, it's kind of sounds crazy.
There's this
crazy and very interesting.
There's a beautiful word in German English, I think, called Wanderlust, right? Is people who really need to be traveling all the time. I think you suffered that disease. I suffer the same. I was born in Chile, grew up in Thailand, traveled to 80 plus countries, I think 87 by now. I was working in Luxembourg for 7 years, was living half time in London for 3 years, half time in Palo Alto, California for 3 years. I had businesses back in the day with offices in Munich, with offices in Madrid. So yeah, traveling is kind of a second nature.
Do you still travel as much as you used to, or Madrid made you to settle down?
I'm so glad when I spent like 10 days in the same place. So I still travel once a month to see friends and my daughter in Paris. So I'm all the time in Paris. Basically, it feels like that. And then with my new job, I need to travel to see clients in different places. Hence, I also have friends in different places. So in 2 days, I'm off to Tuscany for the weekend, coming back. And in the afternoon of Monday, I have to go to Mexico to see a few clients for 2 days and come back. That's an 11-hour flight because I have a thing on Thursday here they have to be at. So yeah, I still travel too much. Yeah.
Wow,
I'd like to settle in one place.
A lot. Yeah? Do you find that Do you find that Madrid could be that place?
It is. I mean, this is a very, very comfortable, elegant, welcoming city. I had never considered Madrid as a home base ever before. And that's just because I didn't know the place. And then with this new job, I came here. I didn't really know what to expect. You know, people go for lunch late, go for dinner late. They're welcoming, they smile. Life is cheaper than other places. The airport is a 15-minute ride. It's 20 euros to the airport. Compare that with Paris, was over an hour, super expensive, 65, and people complaining and then waiting. And it's like, here it's chill, it's relaxed, it's elegant, it's connected to the world. Somehow the South American connection, I mean, all these nationalities from South America make it not a 49 million people, but it's like 500 million people kind of live in Madrid. That's the impression you get. Very the whole Spanish-speaking world. So it's really nice. Yeah. I call Madrid home now. You know, when I go to Paris, I say, I want to go home now. I want to go to Madrid. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great feeling, and I'm happy to hear that as someone like you who've been always all over places and around. But you lived around the world, and also you've been having an incredible career roller coaster, perhaps wearing so many different hats from IPOs to venture capital, and right now you're the CEO. How did you get into this whole non-conventional career route? Because sometimes, people, if they start in the banking, they go to venture capital, usually in the startup scene, and then they continue most of their life being in the venture capital fund. Or you're once a founder, forever a founder. You just keep very often building and then investing on a side. So I'm very curious. How did you
So,
find yourself right now in this situation?
so you've read Asterix, the
No.
cartoon? No.
Oh, but that's the cartoon. It's a long time ago. Yes, I don't know. Like, if,
Well,
yeah, I
well,
hope
it's
so.
it's kind of a national figure in France, Asterix. He has this buddy called Obelix, and
Yes, Obelix,
Obelix,
Asterix and Obelix. Yes, I did read
right?
them.
So Obelix, he fell in this huge container that had the magic potion as a kid. So he always says that. My potion was technology. So in the early 80s, I lived in Thailand, and in the early 80s in Asia, you had a lot of compatible, let's put it that way, copies, but compatible computers. And this was the beginning of the personal computer. And I got hooked to tech as a kid. I was maybe 10, 12. I learned how to program, and I figured that would be my career. My father didn't understand what I did with the computer. No one did, because it was a kind of a new thing. So I studied computer engineering afterwards, and again, no one understood. When I came out of engineering school, I went into consulting. I had never seen a business person in my life. That's my parents were in a different trade. So I started at KPMG, and I did management consulting around IT systems. Very quickly, like 2 years later, I started what we call the e-commerce practice and then the e-business practice. Today, you call that digital strategy, but back then was very early days. So I would extend that to about 10 years in consulting. Small and big companies, different sectors, a lot of stuff in media, a lot of stuff in retail. But that gave me like the structure of the business world, how to interfere with that, but always from the tech side. Obviously, later, I went for an MBA. When I came out, I figured that I wanted to start my own company. So with a friend, we started a copycat of Netflix in France. We were late to the game. We would be the third or the fourth company doing the same. We would send DVDs by mail. And then in '05, we went into video on demand. But that was kind of my first venture on my own, being an entrepreneur with this friend. We acquired a few companies in Germany. We became number one on the French market, number two on the German market, and then we sold it. But that was kind of my first exposure, like an applied MBA. It's like how to run a company. You don't go super deep in anything, but you go very broad in everything. You have to deal with building a product, shipping a product, hiring people, firing people, raising money, venture capital, marketing, salesman, the whole thing. And I'm not sure it fits everyone's personality, but there are a few people who, once they become entrepreneurs, they stay entrepreneurs in their whole spirit. Anyways, after I sold that, I started a second company, which happened to be the same thing as YouTube. But that we did not copy. It was an independent thinking, and we launched more or less at the same time, raised money again, sold it a few years later, B2B focused. And when I sold that again around 2010, I took a 5-year break from working. My kids were small, so I would take them to school. And I had this sense of giving back to the community. So there was a cafe near my house. I would drop the kids. School started at 8:30. So I would say, anyone who wants to talk about entrepreneurship, has an issue, come and talk to me. I have 4 hours available. Book an hour, send me an email from 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30. I would end at 12:30. I'll just sit and give you advice, free mentoring. And I would do that 3 or 4 days a week for many years. And somehow, some of the projects I really liked. Some I really didn't like. And the ones I liked, I started putting a small ticket in them. So I kind of invented myself as an angel investor. I had no idea I was going to do this. And after 5 years, I figured, okay, now I need to get back to work, because not only am I getting poor, giving my money away to everyone, but this is either an expensive hobby or it should become my trade. So I started looking around for a team. I found a team to partner with, and we set up a fund in Luxembourg. So first career consultant, second career entrepreneur, third career investor. We raised $100 million. We invested in many companies out of Luxembourg that lasted for about 7 years. Some of them we took public. Some of them became unicorns. So we did well. It was called X1 Capital. But before that, I started my fourth career. My second startup, so go back, this is end of 05, 06, was dealing with video. So we were publishing videos on the internet, and I was trying to promote this service with our potential clients. So I became the first video blogger of France, right? I was the first user back then of Dailymotion, and I did maybe 800 podcasts, Zivile. So I've been doing this
Oh
one.
my God, that's wild.
Always commenting on the business side of technology, right? The French CNN is called LCI, La Chaîne Info. They had a radio, for example, for 2 years. So every Friday we would go to TF1, this big TV station, and to record an hour and a half commenting what was happening that week. I was in another program, we did maybe 100 episodes, fully dedicated to the Apple world. Back then was clearly becoming one of the best companies, or the top companies in the world. So anything that Apple came out with, my colleagues would comment on whatever the color, the design. I would say, this is what it means in terms of business, etc. So I did a lot of media as well as a fourth career. Fast forward, maybe 4 years ago, when we were starting a fund too with my colleagues in Luxembourg, they wanted to continue doing the early stage strategy that they were comfortable with. I had been doing more and more later stage deals, and I wanted to really go into later stage deals. So for your audience, I don't know if you're familiar, early stage is when you have one guy or a small team, an early idea, and you bring in something new to the market. That's early stage, it's finance and seed stage. But then you refinance the company every year and a half or two while it proves different milestones. They prove product market fit, they prove profitability, expansion, etc. Growth tends to start late B, early C, and I wanted to work with C. C is very much what I did as an entrepreneur, which is a lot of different issues. You deal with HR, you deal with finance, you deal with marketing, you deal with product, you deal with sales, you deal with boards. And I wanted to get back to that instead of always doing the same thing. I mean, I had 16, maybe 15,000 different projects to invest in. We ended up investing in 50 out of 15,000. So I shopped around, talked to all the growth funds, all big companies, and until someone called me back and said, hey, we have a company in Spain that is not growing as fast as we would have expected. You think you could help us grow it faster? And that's how I ended up in Madrid 2 years ago. So that's my 4 hats. You want my 5th career? You're muted.
Oh my God. Okay, wow. What a trajectory. Your 5th career, can I guess? Is it a wine expert?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to get to the wine actually. Like, yeah, along all those careers, I read somewhere that one journalist, when you've got this highest rank diploma of being very good at wines, you will please remind me the name of that. Someone told that I've never seen someone as happy as you were getting that diploma, and it seemed like you just signed $1 billion deal in a way. So how did that come into the picture? Well, you've been definitely busy of building or supporting the growth of big companies.
Yeah. So my world has always been zeros and ones, right? Tech, computers, screens. It's a very asocial activity somehow. Maybe 2005, 2010, with all this new conferences, with the first Tuesdays, like people started mingling again. You have this huge technology people mixing with the rest of the world. But at the beginning, we were very isolated in the data room, right? But next to the photocopy machine somehow. So I needed to find a way to escape from the tech world. And one of the areas where there's a lot of nature is the wine world. If you go to a vineyard, it's the earth, it's the plants, it's the sun, it's the rain, it's the wind. So I started enjoying wine very early on, maybe the early 90s. And I kept going until one day at a tech conference, I met what is called a Master of Wine. It's a very distinctive degree. It's like a PhD level expertise. And that person said, Rodrigo, you've got to stop being a wine tourist and get some proper education in wine, which I did. And I joined a thing called the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, USET, in London. There are 4 levels. I passed level 2 and 3, and then I did level 4, which was much harder. It's called Diploma. And then I kept studying. And then I did online courses during COVID at UC Davis, California. So I did viticulture, enology, chemistry for wine. And I've always liked Italy. It's kind of the country that I prefer in the world. And I keep, ordering Italian wine. And everyone said, as a Frenchman now, says, why do you always order Italian wine, not French wine? And it's because they're good. And I heard there was a thing called the Italian Wine Ambassador diploma. So I applied for that in Verona, and it's pretty hard. And I passed it on my first try. There were more than 60 people presenting that day, and I think 17 or 18 of us passed. And indeed, there was a journalist in the room in the back, and I passed, because a lot of people didn't pass. I was just jumping up and down, and I looked happier. The venture capitalist in the room looked happier that he had signed a multi-million-dollar deal. Yeah.
That's incredible.
That was a great experience.
I love the connection, how you distinguish that it was something that would bring you closer to nature and would allow a bit to step back from the bubbles we are in when you're constantly in this very fast-paced, thriving environment. And now, since you're back to wearing a CEO role and your job is, okay, how can we make the company grow faster? How do you approach then in such situation the case? Where do you begin when you see that there is some stagnation in the growth and you need to make some changes? What were your first steps?
I can't obviously go in all the details here, but I think I was lucky, the company was lucky, the investors were lucky to find me at the right time, right? Because I bring my first 3 careers to this business. I used to be a management consultant. Some people call that a strategy consultant. So I was used to assessing a situation, right? You go into a new client, you very quickly go through different frameworks, different situations, and draft a plan. That's what I did. In the first 6 weeks, I joined in July. Early September, I presented to the board a plan after a proper analysis of the situation. And we've been executing on that strategy for the past 2 years. Nothing has changed from what I said on September 4 or 5, 2024. So they were lucky to get a management consultant in. Second, as I had been an investor, I kind of understand their expectations, what they require, how they think. Therefore, I can adapt the way we operate to what they expect of us. So there's less of what we call agency costs in corporate governance. It's called agency costs between the investors, entrepreneur, or management. So that we're super lucky. And then having been an experienced, I would say, CEO of smaller startups, having seen so many smaller startups, I bring a diversity of perspective, of best practices, of ways of doing things to all the different areas of the company. So I'm very comfortable working with the people in product. We have, 60 plus people in product and putting in the priorities in the roadmap. We're working with our HR department and filling out, how do we do proper feedback and assessment and talent development? Or early on, how do we rebuild the business model of the company, the proper P&L, the proper reporting, or now with the sales team, and how do we do enterprise sales with the proper pre-sales, sales, customer success, acquisition, retention, upsell to do that. And maybe, as I mentioned earlier, as an entrepreneur, there's a drive, an internal drive of entrepreneurs that make them persevere and continue that belongs to the entrepreneurial profile, right? I'm not sure you can transpose a pure manager into being a CEO. Brian Chesky, the founder of the founder of Airbnb, had a post maybe a year ago called Founder Mode. So I'm very much in founder mode. The 2 co-founders of the company are still with us, but I'm on the driver's seat and I'm on founder mode. I put if I were the founder of the company, what would I do? This is what we're doing. So yeah.
What are those non-negotiable green flags you, let's say, especially when you were wearing the DC hat, you would look for in the founders? Because it's all about the patterns, right? Like the way you recognize the wines, the way you perhaps recognize a founder that potentially might succeed. What were your green flags you would spot?
So I'm doing a little bit of a commercial here. I have a website called rodrigosepulveda.com, which is my personal website. It has a section called Ask a VC. And a lot of the questions that I got all the time, I wrote them up as notes, right, up posts. There's one called, what is a good pitch deck, right? And in the good pitch deck, I actually synthesize all of the criteria I look for into 12 questions. Now, to answer your question more specifically, I have 3 questions on marketing, 3 questions on finance, 3 questions on operations, and 3 questions on deals. But what do I look at in a founder? Ambition, first of all. Are they looking to create a mom and pop shop, lifestyle business, which is fine? for themselves, or they're looking to create something very big that can disrupt an industry, can solve a real industry pain point. And often you don't see that. Second, integrity. I think that is non-negotiable. It's not even green flag, it's red flag. If there's an integrity issue, you want someone you can work with for a long time, right? As a founder or team players. We're going to invest a lot of time together, building stuff together. So they need to be transparent. They need to be honest. They need to give you time to react. They need to communicate well. I think integrity in terms of values is key. It's key to business, nothing shady. Third, I think they need to be grounded, like doubt their own actions all the time or have a plan B all the time. There's this famous book by Andy Grove, one of the co-founders of Intel, called Only the Paranoid Survive. You always need to be ready for what if, right? What if we don't win this contract? What if our product doesn't work in a critical environment? It is key. It's more about soft skills somehow than hard skills. Now with AI, you just ask Claude or ChatGPT to answer any hard skills, but soft skills, making you a trustworthy colleague, something that will not flinch at the first problem. Yeah, that's key.
And talking about the soft skills, we always highlight in the startup scene that the team is essential, and lots of investors look for co-founders matchability and that you're not alone. However, we see a big change right now happening with the younger generation as well, and solo founders kind of competing who's going to build the first unicorn or decacorn. So what is your approach? Has it evolved a bit about the founding team?
So I love this Chinese African proverb, because I don't know if it's Chinese or African or invented, but still, it's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team. And it's true for so many reasons. Solo founder, it can work fine. If you succeed, great for you, but it's somehow easier to have a team. If you perform at 100 and your team members perform at 60, even two of them, you're doubling your capacity, right? So it's key, I think, to have a team. I've done this in all my companies, bringing up to speed the team to work, think, react the way I do. I'm not saying that my way is the right way. Far from that. I might be completely wrong in many things, but it makes it easier so that they understand how I think, so they can think in my way as well. So it takes the time of adaptation. I have a leadership team here every Monday. So the whole leadership comes with me and we sync all our work together for 2 hours, and we have a set agenda. So half of it is set agenda, half of it is for current issues. And then I have a one-to-one with each one of them in the week. I have 12 people reporting to me. So I do 12 one-to-one. So I'm left with Mondays to work alone, and then Wednesdays, and then a bit of a few hours here and there. But I think it's better. And you can also use a lot of their creativity, and it's good to have a diverse team, young, old, different geographies, different sectors. Uniformity of thinking is a big mistake. So it's good. You just tell them what you expect and they find a way to do it in their own ways, and it's great.
If you trust, so seems like you trust your people and trust your crew. That's amazing.
Well, you learn as an entrepreneur, hire fast and fire fast. Some people say hire slow, but hire slow, you cannot be overconfident. So hire fast and fire fast if it doesn't work. And again, it doesn't work with me. Doesn't mean the person is bad. It just means that we don't get along or we won't work well along. It was interesting. I did a Myers-Briggs test. This is a personality test of 16personalities.com, which was developed after the Second World War in the US based on Carl Jung's personality profiles. And it's great. You can ask AI if you do it in your own teams. The test online is free. You can have a deeper test that is you have to pay for, but it's pretty accurate. And then you fill in the profiles of your team members and look at the dynamics in your team. And you see that you learn a lot from that on how to interact with different people or less with other people, because we're not all the same. And it's good that we're not all the same.
I love it. Actually, I'm smiling so much because I've done that last year. I had this working with one team on a project. And I was like, okay, so what do we do? We're not only like different people from different backgrounds, but we're coming from all the different countries, from Asia to Europe. I'm like, and somehow we need to make this work. So we actually were doing the work with the personality test and then using AI to see, okay, so how do we match them in pairs? How do we actually keep the dynamics? Super great tip. Talking about life right now and you being so dynamic, even though you mentioned like the last 2 years were lots of work and now you're going back into more into social aspect. What question you've been trying to answer for the last few years about, the world and why we are all here right now in this crazy planet?
Okay, so when we started the fund in 2015, we used a very new framework that was very new called the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And it were not well known. And over the years, everyone started using them, even maybe overusing them. But the original idea was that any investment we did had to answer one of the key results of the sustainable goals. We're trying to do tech for good, right? I've moved on a bit from that because it's complicated. I think I have two big goals to work with in addition to like my personal objectives. But one is how can I retire soon? I'm kind of getting old, and my years left to live and enjoy life are getting shorter and shorter. There's a sign on a building really next to our offices here that says today is the youngest day in the rest of your life, or the youngest you'll feel. So, but yeah, I'm thinking a lot about how I'm going to retire. What am I going to do about when I retire? And people don't believe that I will stop working in tech. I totally will. I've got a lot of music to listen to, a lot of music to play, a lot of beaches to discover and swim, a lot of traveling still in funny countries to do. I wish I could have what you do. I've still have not been to Angkor Wat, and I know you have. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, and I'm spending a lot of time on it as well, is how are we less dependent, or how do we are less of a vassal of the big hegemons of the world in the tech world? We're being digitally colonized completely. We depend on American technology and on Chinese technology. We currently don't really have a way out. So that has been a concern of mine for many years. Like 4 years ago in the summer, I went to the College of Europe, which is the civil servant school for the European Union somehow, for the Commission and members of European Parliament in Bruges, to get training on Europe. How does Europe work? And out of that, I've been trying to interact with all the stakeholders in this, as how do we push for a digital European technology ecosystem? And with this, I was at the European Commission the other day discussing this. I'm part of a group that is led by Thomas Madsen Mugdal and Margrethe Vestager out of Copenhagen. We're working on building a new stack for Europe, a sovereign stack for social media that should expand into a lot of other areas. The company I lead here, we do data management, and we're very much about the EU sovereign approach. So our data, or the data of our clients that we manage, is not subject to US jurisdiction. So there's no Cloud Act for us. We use on-premise cloud infrastructure, so there's no Cloud Act. We use local LLMs, so we enable them. We give them a choice. You either want to be subject to NSA, CIA, whatever, or Chinese equivalents, or you can go full European, and this is what we promote. I think it's worth fighting for. I'm a very convinced European federalist. I know it's not super popular with the current elections in all the different countries going either to one extreme or the other. I think that as a continent, we share a lot. We might speak different languages. We might behave in different ways. We might start on time or start late, but we have the same heritage. If you look at my blood, I have come from the same place as you. So I have Lithuanian heritage, I have Spanish heritage, I have Danish heritage, etc. Dutch, German, Prussian, Polish. My kids have Italian, Slovenian, Austrian, French. We're part of the same continent. And as the same continent, we're currently 450 million citizens. GDP used to be the same as the US. China was way behind. Both are ahead of us. Partly is because we have life choices. We work maybe less, better lifestyle. We contribute more to social security. Hence, there's a GDP gap there. Our only way forward to preserve the way we think, to preserve the way we respect European values, Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union, if you want to go check it out. We cannot be dependent on biases that come from China or biases that come from the Trump administration, right? And so I think it's totally worth fighting for our European sovereignty.
100%. If you would be starting, Rodrigo, right now, a company in Europe, what would be the first thing you would do?
I've been very lucky, I've been very lucky to live or to start my career with a huge technological change. So Gutenberg in the 15th century, right, in Mainz had the printing press, which was an aggregation of different technologies. Fast forward 19th century, we had the steam engine, changed a lot. 1950s and 60s, we had the transistor, and then came the microcomputer. So the computer for the transistor, and then the microcomputer in the late 70s, early 80s. And I started with that. Then I lived through the internet, late 80s, early 90s, the web, social media, mobile, '07, and what we're living now with AI that came to life in November 30th, 2022, right? It's been 3.5 years, is massive. It's like the steam engine. It is like Gutenberg. It is like the personal computer. It is like the mobile. It is like the internet. It's going to disrupt and change so much the way we work, the way we live. Think, you go on the street, you don't think anymore. You just grab your Uber and you just call it from the street. That was not possible before '07. This is just 16 years ago, right? It was not possible. Or 16, a bit more, 19. But now it's normal. You travel and you check your friends from around the world on Instagram, or you just WhatsApp. That 20 years ago didn't exist, right? You need to keep that in mind. These are revolutions, right, with technology. AI is going to do the same. We did a hackathon internally in the company 4 months ago. Huge resistance to doing it at the beginning. Now everyone is coding their own agents. They're all like finishing before and leaving because my work is done. It is a massive change. So it would have to be something around AI because it's what is available now. If you look at the AI world, Jensen Huang, so the founder CEO of NVIDIA, says there are 5 stages of AI. First stage is energy. That is a state play, right? Nuclear plants or space, we can't compete there. Second is semiconductors, full monopoly of Taiwan, basically with TSMC, and then to some extent the global monopoly of ASML to build the machines to do the semiconductors, so can't play there. Third, data centers, super fragmented, huge players, really hard to get into. Fourth, LLM and data. Their investments are in the hundreds of billions. So I think it's really hard to compete there. So the last stage is apps. And apps, it's a bit what we found with the web, right? 25 years ago, which is find a sector, find a niche where there's a pain point and where you can bring penicillin, not vitamin. Vitamin is great, but it's nice to have. You need to find a gotta have. And because I'm getting old, find a sector that you like, not because you need to work, but because you want to do something about it, right? And solve that problem and use AI to solve that problem. I don't know, maybe your problem is how to move your luggage around the world, right? Because you travel so much, or how to book, the best experience or the best Airbnb. I don't know what is. Find a problem in a sector you like and build it with AI. I would do something like that.
Good. Love it. So I have this tradition in the podcast to leave the listeners with a thought to ponder. What would be your thought to everyone who is here with us today, trying to get some inspiration, knowledge, and going this entrepreneurial path of building?
I won't reply directly. I would say there are a lot of languages in the world, right? And unfortunately, a lot of languages are disappearing and dialects are disappearing. But there is one language that allows people from a lot of different backgrounds to communicate, to interact, to share. And it's what it makes as humans, right? And we bond together through this language, and that language is music. So maybe the thought is, what is the next concert you're going to? Because that's what I'm doing a lot at the moment, and I love music more than tech and more than wine.
Love it, Rodrigo. A great way to end up the beginning of our conversation. I'm pretty sure we're gonna continue because we still have quite lots to dive deeper into the human aspect and the way you think and the learnings you've got from all the incredible work you've been doing and extended interest. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Rodrigo with us today before he runs for another important meeting. So thank you for finding time and see you next week. Yeah, have a great day.
Thank you.